Hello and welcome to Energy Readings with Shelby Aesthetic. I am your host, Shelby Aesthetic. Tonight we're going to do the second part of our series, Inside the Chakras. So this is a three-part series. We did the first one, it's been a couple of weeks ago. I think it was actually mid-August or something like that we did it. We've had a couple of shows since then, but I really wanted to go ahead and start them and get that one done, and then hopefully you've listened to it, but if not, that's okay too. We're mostly just going into a little bit more detail about the blog that I wrote back in December of last year called Inside the Chakras, which you can find on my website, thirdeyebetty.com. Just go under blog, or you can also find it on WordPress under Third Eye Betty. Anyway, it's a really cool, well, I think it's cool. It's a really cool way that I see inside the chakras. And last week we discussed a little bit about that. Mostly I was just kind of reporting about what the chakras were. So this is a little bit more detail on how I see the chakras, or what's inside the chakras. But before we get into too much of that, I want to go ahead and kind of tell you a little bit about what's coming up, not just on my podcast, but also what's going on IntuiTalks. If you are listening to this broadcast, we are broadcasting off of IntuiTalks.com. If you are looking to build a spiritual website, this is the place to do it. It's free. It's easy, and it's a whole community full of spiritually like and unlike-minded people, which is my favorite part because there's tons of different types of people and beliefs, and I think that's important. So I'm absolutely I love being a part of IntuiTalks because I feel, you know, like Jenny is the owner of IntuiTalks, and I feel like her putting this platform together for all of us to share in a community-oriented way really helps us grow, not just as individuals, but as a community to help reach out to other people that may be coming into their own spirituality, or even people that have been around for a long time, being able to connect with people that they can relate to. It's also a great place to listen to different podcasts. So if you're interested in having a podcast or a classroom type place, this is also an excellent, there's different options for whatever you decide to do. There's different options. So check it out, IntuiTalks.com. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's coming up this week on IntuiTalks. One of the shows that broadcasts almost every night is called Curious Times with Chris, I just love her. She's a really neat person. And she always has, I like the way she thinks. She always challenges people in their beliefs, and even if she agrees with them, she asks questions, and I love that about her. So anyway, Friday, Selva Dutton's going to be on with her at 9 Eastern, and then psychic medium Corrine DeWinter, who is also the owner of purpleplates.com, will be live on the 22nd at 9 Eastern, and those are both on Curious Times. Angel Meadows is another show that's a regular show on IntuiTalks, so you can also check that out September 23rd at 6:30 Eastern. They're going to have a show. And then, of course, there's the Empowering Women. It's the Small Elf does this, but I believe it's a private series. It's a 14-part series, which would be really neat to check that out. And lots of other shows. I don't want to go through the entire list because it's super long. But check it out. There's also several shows that have been on here that are in archives, so they may not be doing live shows anymore, but all of their shows are in archives. Of course, my favorite is the Teaching Tuesdays show with Renee Richards. If you are a developing psychic medium, or even somebody that's been around for a while, this is I love that show for spiritual development. It's got, I say this almost every week, but it is a gold mine of information in there. So just, she has a lot of free resources that she talks about on her show. So just check all those archives out. Lots and lots of cool stuff. So for me, I will be doing this show tonight. Next Wednesday, I will be doing Inside the Chakras, the final part 3. And then beginning of October, the first Wednesday in October, I'm going to have Kathleen Moore on. We're going to be talking about crystals and how we can use them in our everyday life. And I have a whole slew of questions and things to ask her. So Kathleen's been a psychic medium for 2 decades, I believe. So she's a really cool lady. She's all tatted up like me. So I'm like, hey, what's up, fam? But she's also got a great sense of humor. And she's incredibly compassionate. So I hope you guys will come join us for that show. Also, after we talk about the crystals and rocks and all that stuff, we're going to be doing readings together. And I know I haven't done readings with you guys for a while, so I do want to make sure that I'm still doing that sometimes. Okay, so let's get back into it. All right, so thank you again for being here. Last week we talked about, again, just kind of want to review just a little bit. We have about an hour, but last week we talked about the 7 main chakras and, you know, a little bit about their function. And I'm really trying to keep it simple when I'm discussing these things. There's an incredibly vast amount of information in my vision and the way that I see. So I try to keep it just as simple as possible so that we can all understand it. The biggest thing that I want to talk about, or the biggest thing I want to say before we get started is when we go through the exercises, to remember that this is how I see, this is how I feel, and this is my experience. So there is a chance that you will not see, feel, or experience the things that I do in the way that I do. It doesn't mean that you're broken. It doesn't mean that you can't see. It doesn't mean that you aren't any good at doing any of this stuff. It doesn't mean any of that at all. It just means you haven't found your way to communicate yet, and you will. So please keep that in mind. If I say I see, you know, red in a root chakra, and you see a completely different color, or feel a different color, or know a different color, it doesn't mean that you're wrong or that I'm right. There's no big I's and little U's. We're all equal. We just all have unique ways of doing and saying things. So I'm kind of glad we're not like cookie cutter vanilla wafers across the land. Okay, got all my notes here. So we talked we talked 2 weeks ago, or a few weeks ago, we talked about the front and back side of chakras and how typically when people are working with their chakras, they're only working with the front side. So I want to remind everybody about the back side of their chakras. And last week when we spun them as though we were looking at them head on. So like a plate on a wall is what I said, would be a wheel, a disc, which that's what chakra literally means, is a wheel or a disc. So next week when we get into a little bit more detail, we're gonna talk about spinning them horizontally and working with them horizontally rather than just vertically, which is what we're doing right now. The vertical stuff. And why is it important to work with chakras? I loved this question when I was thinking about some of the different things to talk about during the blog that I was writing. And, you know, we don't see the insides of our bodies. Like, we know we have a liver, we know we have a stomach, we know we have certain organs that are there because, you know, people have actually, you know, seen those things. But just as walking around people, you can't see through other people and see those things. But you sort of just know they're there. They're a physical part of you. Chakras are exactly the same way. We don't see them, even you know, if you're doing an autopsy on somebody, you don't see them, but they're there. There's so much, to me, there's too many people that can see and recognize, feel, and know these center points of energy to not know that they're in existence. So, but what do they do and why are they there? It's really our relation to the rest of our bodies that we have, our physical, astral, mental, emotional, spiritual bodies. It goes on and on and on. That's definitely not where it ends, as well as our interactions with our environment. There's so much information inside of these chakras, and the way that I see them are always in layers, and usually I see I usually see 7, but I know there's more there. I've seen them. And what I mean by layers is, to me, everything's in layers. And if you've ever listened to me speak before on anything spiritual, I've always said that clairvoyance, especially life, and seeing it clairvoyantly, is like an oil painting. You mix two things together to make a certain color, and pretty soon you have this fascinating piece of art in front of you. And I believe that energy is exactly the same way. Everything is in layers, and everything works together, or sometimes it doesn't work together, which causes dis-ease in our bodies. Anyway, so one of the things that I wanted to bring up tonight was about the secondary chakras. Last week we talked about the main chakras and their locations, and this week there's so many secondary chakras, I didn't make a list like I did with the 7 main chakras, but they are just as important as the main chakras. Very common ones that people typically are aware of are around your palms, or in your palms, and also your knees. They're all over your body, as a matter of fact. Some that I work with regularly are at where your eyebrows start. There's 2 of them right below your third eye, and you can actually put your finger there and feel 2 little indention spots. It's a good place for acupressure to help relieve sinus pressure, but it's right there. There's 2 very small chakras, and I don't see them actively working with most people, but I can always tell a clairvoyant by those little chakras. They'll be lit up and spinning, and they push energy into right at the third eye, which I think is really fascinating too, because you can have people with their third eye blown wide open, and there's those little chakras right there they're not moving, and they don't open. But they do work with the main chakra. So all of your smaller ones, it's kind of like you have your hand, your palm, and then you have your fingers. It's one unit. You are one unit, but you have like limbs that do different tasks. So those are, in my vision, that's what I see secondary chakras and how they work. And I did mention that, and they're just as important as the main chakras. I did mention, or at least I think I did, mention last week about being able to about the meridians and being able to work with the meridians in your chakras. So that's a little bit different, though. The meridians are the way we're traveling energy through our body, and the chakras are actually power points. So it's the way you're pulling energy in or you're pushing energy out. That's what your chakras are for. And I mentioned there's also tons all over your body. So when we start doing some of these exercises here a little bit later, you may become aware of some of them. You might not, but you might. Our chakras pull energy from our environment, and they also send it out. So if I'm communicating with somebody, say I'm talking to my wife, my energy bodies and my chakras, it's all connected, we're all working, they're all communicating with her energy. So, and I'm receiving and I'm giving through my chakras. The secondary chakras are a lot of fun to work with. Also, when you're doing meditations and things like that, to kind of open them up, you want to talk about getting a huge amount of light come in at one time. It's a great way to do that, is to work with the secondary chakras. So with the smaller ones, I wanted to talk about kind of one of the ones that's on the palms, because I think most people are mostly familiar with that. If you just take your thumb and kind of rub your palms a little bit right in the middle, a lot of times people will start feeling energy there. They'll feel their chi there. So you just kind of rub around in a circle. Some of these exercises they're pretty simple. Or you can put 2 hands together and kind of rub friction between your hands for just about 30 seconds or so. I'm doing it right now. And then slowly pull your hands apart. And mine try to go back together, like they want to close back together. So that's one real easy way to start working with energy with those small chakras. Those chakras are neat. And your hands, they're like jumper cables. It's the best way I've ever heard it described. They're like jumper cables that you can use for sensing things, healing things, sending energy out. And a lot of people that do Reiki use those, and even in your knees. And all of them tell you information. So this is the big part, because the 7 main chakras, which I do want to get into a little bit more detail about that, because there's some fascinating information that will come from those layers in that chakra. But even the small secondary chakras are going to have a lot of information in them. They're going to be speaking to you. So if you're doing energy work with somebody and you're working with their main chakras, and your hands or your mind is led to a secondary chakra locations, a lot of times those secondary chakras, that's where the real fine detail information comes through, especially if somebody has internal issues. Last week we spoke about an example where looking at somebody's solar, I think it was solar plexus or heart chakra, I can't remember what exactly, but I was saying when you go into that information, or when you go into that chakra, you'll start getting information, and each chakra has vortexes in it. In my vision, each chakra has vortexes in it, up to, maybe 12, but 8, 4, 3, 4, 8, 6. It's usually even. You can have an uneven amount in them, but usually there's one that's there, but it's just not doing a whole lot. But inside each one of those vortexes, and the vortexes are what's pulling the light in. The more vortexes a person has in their chakra, in my vision, the more vortexes that I see, the more light that they're pulling in. And not only is it the more light that they're pulling in, the way that they're pulling the light in and functioning use of that light is different. It almost purees it in a way that makes it real fine. But inside each one of those vortexes are little, they're just little bits of information. They're little cells or atoms, I guess, energy atoms. And when you grab one of those, it takes me, I shouldn't say you, it takes me to specific areas of the body. So if I grab one of those, a lot of times I'll go to a secondary chakra first before it leads me to whatever, what the organ is attached to, or whatever the issue is. And by the way, you can do this work on your pets too. Although somebody the other day told me not to call them pets, but animal companions. So I'm like, everything's politically correct these days. But anyway, so yeah, I lost my train of thought. So anyway, and also one more thing I wanted to mention too before we get into some of the exercises is when you're working with your animals, because you can't get correspondence back from them usually, they can't talk to you. Some people are animal communicators and can. But if you can't, just use your intuition and kind of just go with it and see where it leads you. It's best if you can work with somebody to kind of get input back. And the biggest thing to say about it all is to let go of your expectations about whether or not you're right. Just say what comes to you and say what comes to your mind. If you're in a grounded and centered place and you're really focused on your intuition, you've meditated, you've cleared yourself, and you've gotten yourself where you need to be, the information that comes through, for me anyway, is typically accurate. What I have noticed is if I'm off balance, off centered, and I'm not having a great day, I don't go into other people's energy and try to give them any information. Most of the time it's not going to be accurate, and not to mention I don't want to be in that state and be in someone else's energy. It's rude. Well, it is to me. I think it is. I wouldn't want somebody that was in a terrible mood working on me, that's for sure. And really, that is important. That is so important when you are working with other people. If you are in a really bad place, you probably should reschedule your client instead of working with them, which I'm sure if you're in this work, you already know that. But it's just important, and it's important to make sure that we are fully aware of everything that's going on within ourselves. We're all learning. I'm still learning. I'll be learning the rest of my life. But I think it's important that we're sharing this information with each other out loud and saying the things out loud that need to be said. Okay. The next part is I'm going to I'm going to do, let's see if I have time. I'm going to talk a little bit more, about 10 more minutes, and then we'll do some of these exercises. I might run out of time, but that's okay if we do. We always have next week. Okay, so with the second chakras being involved now, because we've talked about the main chakras, now we're talking about the secondary chakras. They spin and function very similar to a main chakra. The smaller ones, typically to me, sound a little bit different, and it's probably because of their size. Big thing that I've noticed is the secondary, I didn't even recognize them as chakras at first because they're not the same color as your, regular chakras. They're an array of colors. Even when you go into the layers of the main chakra, they tend to lose the color that most people see on the outer part of the chakra. So, for instance, your solar plexus being yellow or gold, or, we talked about some of the different colors. The deeper you go into the chakra, you'll see you'll see colors that will blow your mind. And also to remember, because not everybody is a seer, you can do this work without seeing clairvoyantly. This is a big thing that I cannot say this enough, and I know I've repeated it a couple of times, and it's just so important. I think the majority of people that have ability are very clairsentient. They're knowers, but they don't know they're knowers. So they think they're supposed to be seeing these things or hearing these things or smelling these things. That's not how spirit is communicating with you, or that is not how your energy is communicating with you. So if you can let go of all expectation, here I am telling you, when you go in, you're going to see these colors, and you might not. We might be talking about some of these exercises and begin to do them, and you're not going to see anything but the back of your eyelids. When I see in my vision now, when I'm working with energy, I can see some things with my physical eyes. Most of the sight that I see and use is on my inner projection screen, my third eye, my inner mind, and it almost overlays my physical vision. It's actually really it's hard to describe sometimes. It's like a picture show sometimes that happens when I'm working on people or even on myself, or if I'm doing readings with somebody. It's very much like an internal movie that happens. Now, I've got some really good friends that are not clairvoyant at all, but they're extremely gifted, and they're clairsentient, so they're knowers. They feel and know things. One of my friends, she knows and feels the color red. She doesn't see it. She just knows it. It's kind of like when you walk into a room and you know that two people have just been fighting in there because you picked that energy up. You're not seeing the thought forms run around punching each other. What you do is you walk in and you can feel the thickness of the room. You can feel the energy of the room. And I use that example a lot because I think it's one that most of us have done. Most of us have walked in somewhere and been like, oh, I should probably turn around. We've walked in somewhere and or you've had a feeling that you needed to leave a room, or you had a feeling, stuff like that. So be open-minded and be gentle. Be very gentle with yourself when you're doing these exercises. And I'm not just saying that either. I really mean it. I say it. I do it all the time. I'm so hard on myself. I need to be more gentle with myself. So it's a good reminder. Anyway, so when we go in to start doing some of this stuff, please remember that. Please remember not to try to focus on what you're seeing. And also sometimes the very first thing that comes to your mind, it may not be right. A lot of times if we're not centered and grounded, some of the things that come up, it could be anything. You could be picking up on your neighbor's energy. It could be anything. So it takes practice, lots of practice, and it takes patience with yourself And nobody, I've said this, you know, the whole there's no big eyes and little U's thing. Nobody's going to be better than anyone else at this either. I mean, people are good at what they do because they have practice with it. That's it. So a couple of the things that I want to do a couple of little exercises, but first let's go ahead and start. Let's get everybody grounded. So we'll do that first. And then there's some interesting little exercises that I would like to go through with you guys. It will give us about 30 minutes to do that. And then at the very end, we'll talk a little bit more about what's going to happen with the part 3. So let's see. All right. So if you're listening right now, you can be sitting or standing or laying down, whatever you're comfortable with. Just take a moment. You can close your eyes or you can leave them open. Just take a moment and take in 3 deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. And you're just releasing the stress of the day, and you're just relaxing. In through your nose and out through your mouth. And while you're doing this, really focus right on the center of your chest where your heart chakra would be, where you think it would be. It doesn't have to be exact. You might see color, you might not, you might see nothing, you may feel nothing. Just keep going and focus. In through your nose, out through your mouth. And when you feel like you've got a good focus on your heart, and you're looking at it just like a disc on a wall, you're going to start expanding it until it gets bigger and bigger. And you're still breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. And you continue to expand. And remember, this is a 3D ball. This is not a flat piece of dinnerware. It's a 3D shape. And you're expanding it, it's ballooning out. In through your nose, out through your mouth, until you're standing right in the middle, right in the center of your heart. This is your center. Now take a deep breath in, and notice your crown chakra start to open. And as it does, source light, God light, universe, whatever you want to call it, you'll feel it start to come down. Just let it in. Fill your crown chakra. Fill your third eye. You may see the chakras turn colors. You may see them turn white. You may feel the energy move into your throat and into the middle of your heart. We're going to anchor it here. Take a deep breath in, and as you blow out through your mouth, push that energy down into your solar plexus, your sacral chakra, into your root chakra, and let it sit for just a moment. All 7 of your main chakras are full right now. Take one more deep breath. And as you do, you'll push that energy down again, out, past your knees, past your ankles, through the bottoms of your feet, all the way down, through the crust of the earth, all the way down. You're embraced by your own light and by the light of God. You're perfectly safe, all the way down. But you keep going until you reach the very center of the earth, the very middle, the heart. And when you get here, you can anchor this light in here. There's lots of ways to do that. Just use your imagination. You can do it just by sitting here. Some people, I used to put on like they were lead boots so that I wouldn't float back up. You can sit in a chair, you can stand, but just sit down there for a minute. You're going to start noticing maybe your feet to start tingling as some of that earth energy begins to move up through the soles of your feet, through some of those secondary chakras that we talked about. Past your ankles, it's moving into your knees, filling your entire body. And when you feel it, get into your heart there. Take a deep breath through your nose. And when you blow out through your mouth, you're going to lift that energy from the center of the earth, and you're going to bring it up through the central channel. You can breathe in, pull it up through your body, and let it anchor into your heart. Once you feel comfortable here, take another deep breath and push all the way back up to source. Through your throat, through your third eye, through your crown, all the way up. You may see or notice different chakras that are above your head that you're going through. You may see, feel, or hear things. Keep going all the way up to source. And when you view source, it can be a ball of light. It can be you. It can be Jesus. It can be the sun, whatever you picture. And you pull yourself all the way into the center of the heart of source. And just sit here for just a moment. Now start to focus on the center of your heart again. Bring your consciousness back right there. One of the things that we're going to do next is we're going to connect a few of the chakras together. So with the next part that we're going to do, we're going to work with the solar plexus and the heart chakra. You'll put your right hand on one of the, on your solar plexus and your left hand on your heart now. So what we just did was we grounded so that we have the beautiful energy of source running through us, but we're also grounded and connected into Mother Earth, which is also connected to our heart, which is where our center is. And just keep your hands here for just a few moments. You may notice some tingling. You may see, sense, or hear things. But what you're doing now is using your physical body and the secondary chakras on your palm to bring your solar plexus and your heart together. Your solar plexus, you want it to power into your heart. Sometimes I'll find myself when I'm sleeping, my hands will wake me up because they're vibrating so hard they're numb from the way that they're laying on my body. And it usually happens when I have them over two different chakras. And there's no pressure to feel or see anything. You just know that this is happening. That you're using your intention and your intuition to fuel your heart. Some people have very little reaction. Some people have very deep emotional reactions during this process. But your solar plexus works all day long, especially at work, trying to do this and do that constantly, pushing. And this is a good way, when you're done with a hard day of work, to just sit and refuel and let the two connect. I don't know if any of you are feeling anything, but my hands are starting to vibrate. And you can do this for as long as you want. You can keep your hands there the rest of the show if you want to. But I do want to talk about a couple of other exercises also. That particular exercise I really enjoy, especially if I feel a bit of, if I feel tired. That usually helps a lot. But it really just powers everything back, because these are really power sources. Your chakras are just as important as any other organ or muscle or tissue that's in your body. And a lot of these secondary chakras hold a lot of information. The knees especially. I can always find fear in the knees or the ego in the knees, which is really interesting. And each one of these secondary chakras have, we mentioned the information earlier about the main chakras having, a lot of information in them, but these secondary chakras do as well. I can look at somebody's secondary chakras a lot of times and know some of their balance issues. The soles of the feet are a big one. Lots of people have foot problems. And one question that had come up is, what about amputation? So what happens if you have a part of you that's amputated? And I always found that really such an interesting thing to discuss anyway. My mother had her right fingers amputated at the knuckle back in the late 90s, and she always had, I think they're called like phantom limbs, where her finger would itch, but it wasn't there. And you hear stories like that all the time. If somebody loses a body part, where they'll still feel it on a level. And I truly believe it's because we are made up of our mirror body, our etheric body is still whole and still functioning with the chakra and the energy and stuff that's flowing through there. Physically, her fingers may have been gone, but energetically they were still there, which means you can still work the same way if you have something missing, an arm or something missing. You can still do energy work, and you can still work it. You can still work it the same way. So let's do another exercise since we're grounded. This one, I like this one whenever I'm feeling ultra emotional. So what you'll do is there you have chakras right around. They're all over your head and your elbows and your arms and legs are everywhere. So what you're going to do is put your elbows to your side, right? And then, like you're cradling a baby, you'll go right under your solar plexus, and you're going to want to put one hand. Both your palms are facing up. One hand over the other, just like you would be cradling a baby. Only it would be your solar plexus, your stomach, if it's there. And then you'll just hold it for a second, and then you'll turn your palms in so that they're actually touching right under your belly button where your sacral chakra is. And you're just going to hold it in for just a moment. And when you do, I want you to start the hand that is touching, whatever hand you chose, is touching your body. This is what I do. I start to imagine the palm of my hand, the chakra that's in the palm of my hand starts to spin very fast. And what I'm doing now is when I'm breathing in, I'm pulling in source through, I'm letting it run through my chakras into my heart. And when I blow out through my mouth, I'm pushing that energy down my arms, through all my other chakras, and into the palm of my hand, so that I'm getting, like, it's blasting that energy into my sacral chakra. So take a deep breath. And as you blow out, you'll push that energy from your heart to the palms of your hands, which are pointing at your sacral chakra, and they're filling that chakra up right now. So this is how they're working together. You can use the secondary chakras in this way to power the main chakra. And by power, I mean to add energy to it. This is a really good one too, especially right at the sacral chakra if you're having issues around the bowel or intestine. This is a great way to clear that area. It helps inflammation. It may tickle a little bit or feel peculiar. And with every breath you're taking in, you're pulling that energy into your heart and then pushing that heart energy into your hands, which is going into your sacral chakra. Now, some people would say, well, why wouldn't you just pull it straight into your sacral chakra? And you can, but what we're doing is utilizing our meridians and our secondary chakras, and now we're not just filling one chakra up, we're filling whole portions of our body up with this. This helps to balance and to make sure that every part, because you're a powerhouse of light, and you want everything on you running like a well-oiled engine. You want it flowing, and this helps to do that, especially at the back. So you can put your hands at the cradle position on your back if you want, at the back side of your chakra, and do this. A lot of times I'll work from the front and then push toward the back. Also, because when the way your chakras meet, and we'll talk about this next week when we get into the last part of it, when they are shaped like this, it looks like one piece. But as we're working with them, in the vortex style that we work in them with, there's a front and a back, and they point to each other. And your receivers, your output, I guess, and your input is what all this stuff is, and all the things that are happening with your chakras. That's what's going on. The layers that we're going to talk about next week, I mentioned it a little bit, and I know a lot of people talk about the chakra layers, and they talk about seven layers, and I don't think that they're wrong for saying that at all. I see things a little bit different than some of that stuff, which is also fine. The top layer for me usually feels really, it's not like standard energy that I look at. It's a little bit rough and chunky would be a good way to describe it. And usually it's events that haven't been integrated yet. So I go past that first layer, and I go in pretty deep until it starts pulling me to that area. When I get into the different layers, that's where more consistent energy sits. It's cleaner, it's consistent, it's been worked through. It's a lot of people that have a lot of energetic scar tissue. It's always in that first layer, and clearing that and integrating that is super important. And that's done with shadow work or therapy, or forgiveness is a big one. The deeper you go into the chakras, the different colors start appearing. What looked, yellow going in may end up being white and blue, with enormous portions of light and information the deeper you go into it. Now, on your spiritual body, a lot of times when I'm doing a reading on a spiritual body, I can pick up different lives, or parallel, or past, or future, whatever you want to call them. I can pick up a lot of that information, but you can also do this on some of these real deep layers of the insides of the chakras. So you don't have to go out into, which I do. I like to look at the person from a distance first, and then I go into when I go into someone's energy, I go into their chakras. I think if I had time to do readings the way that I really would like to do them, these sessions would just take too long. That's why we can't do them that way. And as you're doing this work, whether it's with your main chakras or your secondary chakras, for the week following that, you may notice a lot of different things that this doesn't clear away damage. So when you go to a healer or you're doing energy work on yourself, this doesn't cure you. This is a gateway to open up the possibilities for things to begin to transition for you. So in other words, if somebody has chronic pain that's attached to being abused as a child, doing the healing work on them isn't going to make the pain just disappear, but it is going to alleviate some of the physical symptoms, but it's also going to provide opportunity for some of that stuff to be integrated. And it's also important to remember that even, if you're the most powerful healer in the world, you are the one healing your body. The person that's doing the healing is just the receptor, basically, in my opinion. And that's my strong opinion. I think some people are just very comfortable and have the ability to help others, and I think a lot of that has to do with person's openness to it, as well as the communication between the energies. So, but ultimately it is the sitter that is doing the work. I think our function, people that do healing work or readings or things, we have a ultimate responsibility of truth, but also humility, and to know that we're not like, I don't know, I hate to say it like that, but I don't feel like this grants somebody a special card or a gold star because they can do this stuff. I think that some people have just found a way to communicate with energy, and they can help people that aren't able to communicate with energy as well. That's just my opinion. Not always a popular one. So, and then another thing that I want to do, because we still have 10 minutes left, which is good because I still have a crap load of stuff that I didn't get to talk about. Another thing that I wanted to talk about, and this one is also can be done pretty much anywhere. I mean, you can be, I think the thing we talked about last week was the importance of being able to find a quiet space and do some of this stuff. But I mean, you guys know, sometimes at work things are just going crazy and you don't have time to sit in a lotus position and do a long meditation. And they say doing just even deep breathing for a few minutes a day helps. And I agree with that. But I think clearing ourselves, especially if you can just grab 5 minutes in the bathroom or something, clearing yourself also helps a whole lot. So there's another exercise. It's like an energy test, I guess you could call it. But basically, what you're doing is you're wanting to clear and harmonize your chakras, right? And this works with or without a partner, so you don't have to have one. But if you do have a partner, then they're going to be doing what I'm going to say right now. So earlier we used 2 different hands on 2 different chakras, and then we used 2 hands on 1 chakra. So this time you'll take a deep breath. And this time I want you to focus all the way on your root chakra, all the way down. We're going to start at the main chakra, the root chakra. And when you see it, I want you to see, if you can, use your imagination. I used to draw a little stick figure to do this in the very beginning. And I would draw the little circles where the chakras would go, and I would stare at them. So if you're doing that, focus for just a moment on your root chakra. And you're going to want to turn yourself around and notice that it is a perfect sphere, this chakra is, okay? It goes all the way through. Now I want you to picture, instead of that sphere, two tornadoes with the tips of them. So the vortex, not tornadoes. They look like tornadoes to me. With the tips, the small part touching each other in the center. So when you look straight at you, you'll see the round chakra. And if you look to the side, you'll see it cone. It's like a cone. It goes to the middle. 2 ice cream cones. And then you'll turn yourself around on the back and you'll see in the same place where the root chakra is supposed to be the next one. And both of these small ends are facing each other. So as we go up, and I'm talking about the different chakras, I want you to use this image. Okay, so you'll breathe in and you'll fill the middle of your root chakra, and then when you blow out, you're going to push that light from the small part to the expanded parts all the way out of your body, all the way out of your energy. So it's like you're blowing a horn almost. And you're going to do it on the front, and then you're going to do it on the back. So you'll pull the light in, and then you'll push it out by blowing out. I use the breath a lot because it's perfect for doing this kind of work. Keeps you focused. So take a deep breath in. Fill your root chakra from the front and blow out through the front. You may feel your chakra start spinning real fast. You may not. Take a deep breath and blow it out of the back. We're going to do this with each one until we get all the way at the top, and then we'll do a little discussion about it. So take a deep breath to your sacral chakra, the front side, blow out. Take a deep breath to the sacral chakra, out of the back, blow out. Solar plexus, front. Back. Breath in to the heart. Blow out. Breathe in. Blow out the back. Breathe in to the throat. Blow out to the front. Breathe in. Blow out through the back. Breathe into your third eye. Blow out. Breathe in. Out the back. Lastly, the crown. Blow out. Breathe in. Blow out the back. Okay. So you can go as fast or slow with that exercise as you want, but what you're doing, because you remember what we have done is we have integrated ourselves and we have centered ourselves with the earth and with source. We've combined that energy with our own energetic field, our own heart center. So what we've done is take those three energies combined and we've used them as one energy, and we've pushed debris out of the chakras. So the discussion that I wanted to bring up on the last part of that exercise, that's one of the quickest ways for me to do if I'm out in public and stuff, to do a quick check on my chakras, if you will. And I actually noticed just then when I was doing that a little bit around the back side of my sacral chakra. But for me, there's almost a resistance. Or sometimes I have a hard time visualizing it, and I'll know there's a little bit of imbalance there. So pushing that light through helps to recenter you into that heart center, basically, because you want all of your chakras connected into your heart. So when you connect at your heart and you're pushing this energy all through your body, that's what you want to do. You want to have everything connected at your heart. Especially people that are trying to open their third eye. And I see this on platforms all the time. It drives me nuts, but people want to know how to open their third eye and how do they activate their pineal gland and how do they, don't focus on just your third eye. Activate your heart and then use that energy to open up the rest of your chakras. The information and the stillness that comes from that is pure and it's light, rather than more astrally psychic feeling information. Because to me, I feel like there's, we talked about layers earlier. There's layers of psychic information. So it varies from your typical psychic reading into a clairvoyant reading. So what's the difference? Well, the difference is the grade of seeing that you're doing. Not that one is better than the other. They're just different because there's an infinite amount of ways to see, and there's an infinite, just like there's an infinite amount of ways to be and live and look and see and do. It's the same thing with this. So you want to get that finer information, the finer light to come through. And doing that with these exercises are super easy too, and they don't take a long time, which I think in today's world, especially, that's important. And before we go, I can't believe this hour's already gone. This entire day just slipped out from underneath me. Before we go, so next week we're going to talk about a little bit more about the chakras, and we're going to go into different aspects of them and the different layers of them and how the different layers interact with the different bodies. I almost wish I would have made this a 4-part series. I guess it's not too late, but there's just so much information, and I enjoy talking about and doing these exercises because it's just, to me, it revitalizes me. And we'll talk about the chakras as a set and how they work in sets and stuff like that. So that will be next week. We'll work a little bit more with some of the secondary chakras. I did mention earlier, this one will just take just a second. I mentioned earlier about the tiny chakras that are right at where your eyebrows begin, and it's also a pressure point right there. So there's two little chakras that are right there. And if you actually put your thumbs there, you'll feel little indentions where your sinuses are. That's where they do that acupressure. And you don't have to push hard, but just kind of massage that area a little bit. And the next time you're doing these exercises and you start to bring the light in, when you have filled all of your chakras, start pouring some of that light into these secondary chakras that you feel, like into your palms, your knees, the soles of your feet, but your eyebrows right there too. That sounds crazy, but it doesn't just help with, for me, it doesn't just help with my ability to see clairvoyantly. It really helps with my allergies a lot, like a whole lot. I have severe allergies, so it helps a ton. So I'm not sure if I was clear enough on how to find those, but I don't know. Anyway, push the light in and spin them. They spin the same. Hi, John. I'm glad you were able to be here, and Amy and Kathleen and Corrine is here, who I mentioned is on who is on Chris's show, Curious Times, on Saturday. So check her out. But anyway, so yes, please do that. Spin all of them, all the little ones and all the big ones, and any of them that you feel or see or don't see. Just you can just tell yourself, that what your intention is. My intention during this meditation is that all of my chakras, I don't like calling them secondary or minor chakras because I feel like they're just as important. But tell yourself you want all of them open and spinning. You want all of them to be pulling the light in. And when you do, another great exercise is once you're grounded and centered and you've got that light blasting through your central channel, if you tell yourself to start pulling that in through all your chakras, I have done that a couple of times, and it was in a vision that I saw how to do it. It was like little buds of light were popping up off of my skin and just pulling. It was like eating light. I don't know how else to describe it, but it was absolutely a phenomenal experience. Each time that I've done it, it's just been amazing. So that's another good one to do. I don't want to go over. I'm so sorry I didn't get to finish everything I wanted to talk about, but I appreciate everybody that was able to come tonight. And for those that you are listening, we are broadcasting from IntuiTalks.com, so check out IntuiTalks.com. is an amazing spiritual platform for lots of people. It's a great place for a community to get together. And thank you everybody again. Amy, it's good to see you. And check out Corrine on Saturday. We will be back here for the third part of this series on Wednesday. Okay. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the show. Thank you guys. Again, I'm sorry I didn't get to get through everything, but we'll try to sneak it in next week. Maybe I'll make it longer next week. I don't know. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Bye.